Let's talk about Aristotle, John Stuart Mill, Jeremy Bentham, and the utilitarian theory of ethics. To understand utilitarianism, we have to start way back with good old Aristotle and the Nicomachean Ethics. It's because Bentham and Mill, in their presentations of the theory, focus on a word, happiness. And they have taken that word happiness from translations of the works of Aristotle, particularly the Nicomachean Ethics. In the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle uses this Greek word eudaimonia that is translated into English as happiness, and that's rather an unfortunate mistranslation. That's because today, when most of us use the word happiness, we're all sorts of bound up in happy, happy, joy, joy, and the physical pleasures of life, sex, drugs, rock and roll, happy hour, dancing at the club, doing the Texas two-step, and all of that kind of good rot. Well, that is not what they are talking about. Certainly not what Aristotle was talking about. To cover it deeply, the best thing to do is let me reference you to two very good presentations of Aristotle's theory of eudaimonia, presented by carneades.org and by Dr. Gregory Sadler. I will put links in the description below, but to put it very brief summary, for Aristotle, eudaimonia, or happiness, is the end goal of life. Eudaimonia is a harmoniously balanced, fulfilled, comfortable life shaped by reason. You reach eudaimonia, or happiness, when the parts of your body, soul, mind, and emotion are all in their correct proportion. The physical nature, the emotional nature, and the rational nature of your being are all just exactly right and just balanced. There is not too little, there's not too much. For example, physical needs. Being without a home or shelter or food or clothing is quite uncomfortable, so you can't be, quote, happy. If you have too much, then you have to worry about thieves and robbers and embezzlement and all of that other stuff, so it's uncomfortable. Being without power at all is not comfortable, not happy. Having too much power, well, there's the sword of Damocles. Unhappy is the head that wears the crown. It's a struggle. So, happiness for us, when we use this word happiness in the utilitarian theory, remember that it is this concept of eudaimonia, a harmonious, balanced, just proportioned, fulfilled, and comfortable life. Now, Aristotle says the end goal of life is eudaimonia. Utilitarianism takes that idea over and starts with the fundamental question, well, how do we get to this state, and how do we achieve it as a society? Well, we start with one of their little slogans, the greatest happiness is the good. Well, that's simply a restatement of what I said earlier. The end of human being is eudaimonia, or happiness. The utilitarians' theory, their thesis, is that any action or practice as compared to some other action is to be preferred if it leads to the greatest possible balance of good consequences with the least possible balance of bad consequences for the largest number of people. So when we look to take any action, we have to first start with this question: who will be harmed and who will benefit? How many will be harmed and how many will benefit? Notice that how many and who. Utilitarianism is balanced on the premise of egalitarianism, that is, ethical egalitarianism. No one person is of greater moral value than any other person. We are morally, ethically equal. And when we consider the actions, our actions and the actions of others, we must consider everybody as being morally, ethically of equal value and equal importance. Thus, actions are right to the degree that they promote happiness, that is eudaimonia, or decrease pain. Actions that decrease happiness or promote pain are wrong. That's, of course, this comes from something that's true for every animate species. We seek pleasure, that which, makes us feel good, and we seek to avoid pain or harm. We see that in even the most fundamental of the little protozoans. The problem is that sometimes we look for those things that we think will be good for us, but in fact are harmful. So we have to consider the possibility that something that we see right now as being good might in the long term turn out to be bad. So we have to balance that. We also have to remember, as Kant said, we live in a society. We are surrounded by other people. We have to take them into consideration. Why do we have to take them into consideration? Because our lives and our property and the quality of our lives depends upon peaceful cooperation amongst all of those people and all of us. We are constrained by the necessitudes of getting along, of being in a productive, positive, beneficial society. When we think of it in a community situation, the interests of the community fit into this utilitarian theory quite well as well. Community is the sum of interests of all of its members. Thus, for a community, the purpose is to increase pleasure for as many as possible while limiting harm to as few as possible. Utilitarianism is committed to the maximum good, that is, producing the greatest possible balance of positive values, positive outcomes for everybody, while limiting any possible harm to the fewest number possible. So, at this point, we can just summarize this as we're looking at the ends, the consequences, the results, the outcomes of our actions. And utility simply asks, will those consequences be good? Will it be positive? Will it be beneficial? So, what are these means to ends? What are the ends means construction? Now, some things we enjoy intrinsically, that is, for themselves alone, and not for their benefits. For example, our personal health. This is an intrinsic good. The greater your personal health, the better off you are. Some things are good in themselves, that is, intrinsically. Some things are good instrumentally, that is, things that we use to achieve other things. Remember, Kant talked about hypothetical imperatives and categorical imperatives. We have basically the same here with the extrinsic and the intrinsic. The extrinsic goods are those that are instrumental, that are hypothetical. We get an education in order to get a good job. We get a good job in order to have good salary. We have good salary in order to have things, and we have those things that we think will make us feel good or be happy in the eudaimonic sense. Many times we find out that we've been misled. We can have all the stuff in the world and still be miserable. Utilitarian asks us, why? How is that possible? We're kind of optimistic. Utilitarianism is optimistic in that it conceives that most people generally do not prefer perverse desires, things that will be harmful to themselves or others. We tend to prefer those things which we think will be good for us, and we avoid those things that we think are bad for us. We seek to avoid harm while preferring that which is beneficial. As I said earlier, sometimes we get confused about what is good or bad for us. So we have to figure out a way of calculating, of deciding which action will end up with the best, most positive, beneficial outcome. For that, utilitarianism gives us the hedonic calculus, which I'm going to refer to as the utilitarian calculus. This is simply the way in which utilitarianism calculates or attempts to calculate which is the best action, which gives us the best outcomes. Utilitarianism is committed to the measurement and comparison of the societal good, that which is beneficial. Bentham created the hedonic calculus, trying to calculate the total good of any alternative in terms of its benefit. So, how do we calculate this? What are the rules here? The units in the calculations are based on the factors involved in deciding what act should be considered good or bad. Does it always mean the greatest good for the greatest number of people? No. That is a misconception that gets bantered around a lot. I've seen a lot of courses on ethics that talks about utilitarianism, which says greatest good for the greatest number. And Mill and Bentham both go out of their way to say this is not what they're talking about. This greatest good for the greatest number is the rule of the mob, and they want to avoid that. This is not how it works. We have to start by looking at the quantities involved here. How many people benefit? How many are harmed? If more people benefit than are harmed, then it is possibly, might be, potentially a darn good thing. But somehow that doesn't add up if you scrutinize it just a bit. Let's say everybody in your city will gain $1, but all we have to do to give everybody $1 is to kill one person. There's a literary example of that. Shirley Jackson's 1948 short story, The Lottery, in which one person is randomly selected for a sacrifice in order to assure good crops for the rest of the village. No, that doesn't work. How many of you would like to be killed in order for other people to maybe get some slight marginal benefit? I think my life is worth a bit more than $1. Not much more, maybe $1.295, but not much more. Strictly speaking, if we take utilitarianism at its bare minimum statement, the greatest happiness is the good, then we would have to say, sure, that's okay because only one person has been harmed while everybody else benefits. The problem is that the harm in this case is greater than the benefit. Let's get another extreme example. Rape. What about rape? Okay, your basic rape, one person benefits, the other person is harmed. Therefore, it's morally neutral according to utilitarianism, right? No. Because the benefit for the raper is minuscule compared to the harm that is done to the person who is raped. Rape is not morally neutral. It's morally despicable. It's near the bottom of the barrel, if not the bottom of the barrel. It may even be the scrapings under the barrel. So, it's not just a matter of adding up the numbers. We have to talk about the kind of benefit and the kind of harm. What is the quality of the benefit and what is the quality of the harm? So how do we calculate quality? Quality, we're thought of and we're told often on, is that it's entirely subjective. That what some people think is beneficial, other people think is harmful. Taking care of critters, some people think is good, other people don't want to have critters around them. We have to look at this quality question from 7 different angles. Bentham suggests in his original proposal that we can evaluate the quality of benefit or harm, and we can put that into numbers by the simple process of counting heads. There are 7 criteria in the utilitarianism calculus that we have to consider. They are intensity, duration, certainty, proximity, fecundity, purity, and extent, one at a time. Intensity refers to the strength of the harm or the benefit. As we just suggested a minute ago, death is a stronger harm than a few dollars. One of my favorite examples of utilitarian thinking on an individual basis is going to the dentist. Second, duration. Duration is the length of time that the harm or benefit will last. The pleasure that the rapist receives is just momentary, but the damage to the victim lasts a lifetime. The duration on one side is brief, the duration on the other is very likely permanent. Certainty. Certainty refers to the probability of the outcome, whether it will be harmful or beneficial. If the probability of harm is very high, while the probability of benefit is low, then the action has very low value. Proximity, or as Bentham puts it, propinquity. How close is that outcome? The nearer the outcome in time or space may increase its value. We usually tend to place greater value on those outcomes that affect ourselves and those around us right here and now. But sometimes we have to put a higher value on outcomes that are farther out. For example, what everyone should do the first time they have a job and they start working for a living is to set aside 15 to 20% of their net income into some kind of a retirement plan. You invest a little amount today in order to gain a beneficial retirement, reap the benefits years away. The fifth value in the utilitarian calculus is fecundity. We should place higher value on those outcomes that will tend to produce more of the same outcome. That which is beneficial immediately will be of higher value if that benefit produces more, greater, or long-term benefits. People I've known who were meth addicts. Getting high, getting stoned, getting wasted may be pleasurable today, but it doesn't produce further positive outcome. It's low fecundity. On the other hand, I've known a lot of people who push iron around. They love to lift them weights. Usually it's just been bodybuilders, but whatever. Weight training can be actually pleasurable. I enjoyed it. But the thing of it is, if you stick with it, that pleasure involved in simple exercises produces further positive outcomes. It increases your health value, which staves off diseases and all sorts of other stuff, and so has maximal fecundity. Our sixth value in utilitarian calculus is purity. If an outcome is wholly beneficial, without harm, without pain, then it has higher value than an outcome that is completely painful with no benefit at all. Seventh value is the extent. Like immediacy or propinquity, extent reaches out in space and time. The farther out the benefit reaches, to farther out in space to more people, or farther out in time to more people or to the world in general, then the greater the value may be. If the benefit is only for a few, or only for a brief time, then it may be of lower value. Those are our 7 values that we have to look at and evaluate and put numbers on. I can't imagine. That is the basic foundation of utilitarian theory. When we have to make a decision, we have to sit down, consider consequences, have to consider all the factors that go into increasing the probability that the outcome will be the minimal beneficial outcome. That's the basic idea. Thank you very much. Go watch